Today we're diving into Cloud Midgar Mercenary with my co-host for this deck guide today, John Ryan Hamilton, commonly known as XJCloud on Moto, Twitch, YouTube, and Blue Sky. This commander feels like he walked right out of Final Fantasy and straight into Duel Commander. He's quick, he's deadly, and once you put the right equipment in his hand, games end fast. If you enjoy decks that pressure your opponent while still holding answers, Cloud is worth a serious look. We'll be working off of one of John Ryan's recent deck lists available in the description below. XJ, please take a second to introduce yourself, and thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, thank you for that introduction. I am John Ryan Hamilton, aka XJCloud. Like you said, you may find me on Twitch or social media, like on Blue Sky, or just out there in the Moto trenches. I am a longtime Legacy player, recently a little bit disenfranchised, so I've been playing more Duel Commander nowadays. I played Duel Commander like way back, like a decade ago when I was in college. We had like a tiny Duel Commander circuit at my LGS, and I just when I didn't know anything about the format, but I just kind of forgot about it until I came they got the format onto Moto, and I was very happy to jump back in. I have always enjoyed this format.
Yeah, I myself played Vendilion Click a long time ago with Tunnel Vision before the tuck changes and back when it was 30 life and it was 10 swings, but your results started showing up on Moto of August last year with Thalia. I believe you had a third and first, and then recent trials, you've taken first with Cloud in June and August. So without anything else, let's jump into the commander overview, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
Okay. Cloud is a straightforward 2/1 body with the ability to tutor up a piece of equipment, and once equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, the ability triggers an additional time. But the magic is how he interacts with the equipment. On his own, he's solid. Once you stack the equipment like Umezawa's Jite, Skull Clamp, or even Hand of Vecna, he stops being solid and starts being a nightmare. He doesn't just attack, he pressures life totals, controls the board, and forces opponents to play on the back foot. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's an apt description of Cloud?
Yeah, I think more or less. We'll get into it more later in the video, I'm sure. But Hand of Vecna is a card I feel a little strongly about. But
I think Hand of Vecna is very spicy, and we have a very active Duel Commander scene out here in Colorado and Denver specifically, and that has been a very passionate topic, as well as Minriki Gasari, which I know you have some feelings about as well. Anything with regards to that aside, like commander-wise, is there a reason we play Cloud as opposed to other white all-stars in the past, like Thalia or Thalia? Is just Cloud head and shoulders above everybody else right now in your eyes?
I think so. I wrote a whole article on Cloud, like just a primer, why you should play the deck, etc. Like way back a few weeks after Final Fantasy VIII dropped, and unfortunately the easiest comparison is Thalia, so I use it as a bit of a punching bag whenever I'm talking about how good Cloud is, because I do think Cloud is just the optimal deck to play if your goal is to win as many games of Magic as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's painfully obvious that it's a tutor in the command zone and a repeatable tutor, and in a format like Duel Commander, where often people will say it's somewhere between Vintage Cube and Legacy Cube, having access to Skull Clamp and Umezawa's Jite is very powerful. And obviously a newer card like Pre-War Formalware, which I'm sure we'll jump into. All right, let's take on the strengths of this deck then. So 3 big strengths really define this deck. We've got power with Skull Clamp is one of the most powerful and busted cards legal in the format, and Cloud is probably the best deck at utilizing it. Consistency, Cloud is an extremely cheap commander that tutors, meaning he's extremely adept at executing the same powerful game plan, namely Skull Clamp, in the vast majority of games. And versatility, Cloud's tutoring ability also allows you the flexibility to grab whatever you need out of your deck in any given matchup, whether it's card advantage, removal spells, or board presence. So really walk us through what you feel, aside from the aforementioned strengths, which draws a player to play Cloud. And in this meta, do you feel it's atop the meta? Is it better than Aragorn? Is it better than Deadpool currently?
So the biggest thing to me, honestly, is the consistency of the deck. Like we said up top, Duel Commander, it's 99 card singleton format. A lot of games are just going to play out differently based on the cards that you draw, the cards that you see, and across every format in Magic, one of the big goals in deck building is mitigating that variance and trying to execute your game plan as consistently as possible. And being such a cheap commander that always grabs you the card that you need makes Cloud just such a powerful Swiss Army knife. That combined with just Skull Clamp, like you said, one of the most broken cards that's still legal in Duel Commander, and the fact that Cloud synergizes with Skull Clamp, getting like the double card draw when you need that, it's just it feels a little silly sometimes. I do think that Cloud is it's maybe a little bit of a hot take, especially if you talk to people overseas about it. I personally think that Cloud is one of the best, if not the best deck in Duel Commander right now, but the French are a lot less high on it than I am.
Yeah, I find it fascinating, and this has come up on a number of other deck guides, is that it just like within any other format, like Legacy, I often refer to as like, if you look at what's happening in Japan, it's like, wow, they're really cooking over there. And then, the home of Duel Commander is really France. Like that's where it started and so on. But to your point, I feel like there's a little bit of disrespect of Cloud across the ocean, whereas like we see consistently the results on Moto. My own personal small sample size of seeing it locally, it's just such a powerhouse and it grinds so well. It's like even when Dark Ritual was alive and you were able to power out a turn to, Torok Dread Canter, they were able to rebuild just so quickly. It was just like, what are we doing here?
I
So,
got Dread of Knighted by Turok Dread Canter the other day on Moto, and then still won the game.
wow, people are really tucking hard for for Cloud right now, which I think is pretty awesome. That it's that much of a presence in there. Speaking additionally to some of the strengths of the deck, it's just like I feel like mono white is one of the best colors in Duel Commander, and that's apparent by the cards that are played the most within the format. Solitude, Swords. I mean, we can just go down the line. Do you feel the same way? Do you feel like white's head and shoulders above the other colors at this juncture, or what's your take on that?
I kind of agree. It's a tough needle to thread exactly, but the name of the game primarily in Duel Commander is the state of your removal spells. Duel Commander is just such a creature focused format. It kind of has to be with how commanders work in general. And white removal is just going to be the cream of the crop. We have Swords to Plowshares and Solitude, and then underneath that you have like 10 other worse copies of Swords to Plowshares that you'll see in most of the mono white decks after that. In addition, you have generally some really efficient creatures, and efficiency is another very important thing. You don't necessarily need like big raw stats on like a chunky 4-drop or whatever. You'd rather play some very efficient like 2-drops, stuff like that. So you kind of outmuscle the creatures that you generally see in something like green. Um, and then white also offers you a little bit of combo hate, which is the other half of the format, where some decks are trying to go circumvent the creature density in the format by playing these creature lean strategies, Lier, Azusa, stuff like that. And white still gives you some anti-combo tools, not necessarily as helpful in the aggregate as black having discard and blue having counter spells, but you still have good tools to fight everything. Like blue's missing removal, black's missing as good creatures, and white kind of gets it all.
It feels like white is this great amalgamation in this format, to your point, where it gets it all. You get some stacks, you get solid, I'd say above solid, probably like B plus range interaction. Like it really has it all, it feels to me. I find it fascinating with the lists, looking at a number of Cloud lists. Like some are going away from the stacks plan and cutting down on, Armageddon and Ravages of War and playing more Cataclysms. What is your take on that as one of the better experienced pilots with the deck?
I played Cataclysm a lot in the early version and eventually tried playing the Armageddons, and then landed on currently I'm playing both Geddon and Ravages of War, and I've cut the Cataclysm. Um, it definitely depends on the decks that you're targeting and the exact metas that you're trying to play for. But I think Cloud's worst matchups are matchups where Geddon is better, but Geddon can be harder to line up than Cataclysm against like opposing creature decks and stuff like that. But it's a card that you mostly want to jam when you're ahead or jam against a combo deck to slam the game shut. And Cataclysm doesn't let you slam the game shut as well, because you blow up a bunch of your swords, you blow up some of your creatures, stuff like that. Whereas get and you'll just flat out win the game. There's also like the micro combo with
Flare Fortitude.
Flare of Fortitude. That doesn't come up a ton, but I've definitely done it multiple times so far.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure. We have a Duel Commander monthly put on by the Denver Mulldrifters, and I've had the pleasure of watching a Cloud player blow out another player by just sacking a Doom Traveler to Flare Fortitude, then casting Armageddon. It's just like, wait, what? Yeah, everything's indestructible and hexproof, and my life's not going to change. That's pretty amazing in its own right. One thing that I think is slept on with Cloud that was some rather recent interactions that I've come across while playing it is if Cloud's equipped and you put a Sheltered by Ghost on it, and then you target Cloud, that's now 2 instances of the ward triggering, which not a lot of people realize that. It's like, oh, if Cloud's equipped, anything that triggers off of Cloud triggers twice. And I think that's fascinating in its own right. I personally feel that Sheltered by Ghosts, whether it's in Cloud or not, is an underplayed card in the format. Do you feel it has a home in Cloud? Do you feel it's underplayed in the format? Or is it just kind of, the 101st, 105th card in a list?
I do like Shelter by Ghosts. It was another card that was in my initial lists. I played it a little bit in Felia, like right before Cloud came out as well. Felia good at utilizing O-rings a little bit better than other commanders, just because you can target the commander and they put it back in command zone, you flicker it and you eat another thing. Like you said, if you have a Cloud equipped and then you put the Shelter by Ghost on Cloud, then you get to double the ward. That's something that comes up with Lava Spur Boots a lot. But I ended up cutting it from my current list. I wouldn't be surprised to put it back in the list at some points, but it's just not currently in my deck. It's awkward to weave in matchups I'm concerned about. Stuff like Aragorn, where if they're holding up counter spells and removal spells constantly, it can be like really rough to rely on that as your O-ring effect. But it's definitely a good card and has some strong synergies with Cloud. I wouldn't be surprised to see it in more lists.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we've covered a good amount of the strengths. Is there anything else you want to add to this section, or are you ready to move on to weaknesses?
We can go on to the weaknesses.
All right. So all decks have soft spots, board wipes, sting, in addition to being targeted removal. Losing your creatures while your swords sit lonely on the table is not where you want to be. What are some of the pain points for this deck in particular?
So there is this kind of preconceived notion that as a longtime Death and Taxes player, I see some similarities drawn towards where people are just like, oh, if your opponent has like some removal spells, how are you going to win with your like piddly creature deck and equip your things? But it's similarly to Legacy Death and Taxes right now. You're a overwhelming card advantage deck before your like a creature equipment has to hit them attacking deck. So targeted removal I've found is like not is much more lacking unless it's backed up by other things like Aragorn taking the Monarchy or like these big inevitability engines like the Atraxas and Elementsters and stuff like that. So in that vein, the board wipes are much rougher because there are some matchups where you are the aggressor and you're going to get blown out by a timely Wrath of the Skies or a Farewell or something. But outside of board wipes, your weak points are removal that targets your actually good cards, which is Skull Clamp, Boom's Augite, the equipment. I've seen a lot more people going up on Shatters, the mono red decks, which is a extremely good matchup for Cloud. But I've seen them playing a lot more Braids and Untimely Malfunction, I think is the card. There's another Shatter. Stuff like that, because you can point all your removal spells on your creatures as you want. Cloud is going to, refill your hand with a Skull Clamp if you just leave it in play. And then at the end of all that, combo decks, I think, are the other biggest pain point. But these are all like fairly minor pain points. I don't think I've played a combo matchup that's necessarily that bad. They feel a little close, but you can definitely like tech a lot of good cards for them. Like the Geddons that we were talking about are really good against Liers and Azusas and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like having watched Cloud evolve and a lot of the Thalia players move to Cloud, I feel Cloud's in a very, very good position, especially after the BNR, where Rog's Tev got got kicked down a fair peg. Obviously, Blood Moon wasn't really impacting you, and then Force of Will, Aragorn being more of a challenge, them now no longer having that protection spell, as the RC would like to say. I think that's helped this deck a lot. I think to your point about teching for Cloud, me personally, I'll likely be bringing Deadpool to Atlanta, but I've brought back the original K command because I'm just like, I need to be able to deal with the amount of artifacts and just, the Skull Clamp can just take over the game so quickly. And I guess this is an interesting point of discussion too, is a lot of people feel, and I mean, it's the internet, it's a very vocal minority, it's everybody's excited. Do you feel that Cloud or Skullclamp is over the line currently?
I kind of think it is. I think specifically, I think they should ban Skull Clamp before they ban Cloud. I think Cloud is a really good pivot for Felia in the future. Um, and Skull Clamp is just one of the best cards in the format by far, and just kind of wildly swings games sometimes when like you're playing Slimefoot and Squee and stuff like that. It is just banded across every format down to Vintage, where it's not really that playable, but it's just like a really nutty card. I wouldn't be surprised to see it go, but I'm loving all of the propaganda across the pond where none of them seem to care about it, and I'm just gonna keep killing people with Skull Clamp until they don't let me anymore.
Just keep drawing 4 cards with Skullclamp off them.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand a lot of people's consternation with it, and especially if it's at your local meta and your opponent's drawing 4 off the regular. But I look at it, I feel like if Aragorn is okay, and this is all theoretical, and that allows Deadpool to be okay, which Deadpool is a very intuitive experience, then Cloud with Skullclamp, in my opinion, is okay because there's so many points of interaction for that. It's like you tutor up Skullclamp. Okay, well, if they don't play it on 3, you have the opportunity to thought seize them. Or when it goes on the stack, you can counter it. Or when Cloud goes to equip the Skullclamp, you can kill the Cloud or blow up the Skullclamp. So, I mean, I get it. It's very, very powerful. That goes without stating. But I feel like if Deadpool and Aragorn are okay, then I feel Cloud should be okay. And if something should get banned in the future, to your point, I would prefer it be Skullclamp over Cloud, because Cloud just offers up so many cool potential opportunities with equipment.
Yeah. I more or less agree with that. I think the biggest pain point for Cloud is just how consistently you can execute your like Skull Clamp game plan. Like you said, there are answers to Skull Clamp, but Cloud gets to put Skull Clamp into play, or attempt to put Skull Clamp into play, basically every game, and the opponent doesn't necessarily have their answer lined up every single game. And that's, I think, the strength of an extremely cheap tutor that also has the Skull Clamp synergy puts Cloud a little closer to the line, if not over it.
Good. I welcome these conversations with people like yourself and people across the pond as well, and I think that's healthy. I think that's a good thing for format if that's what we're talking about, as opposed to banning iconic cards like Force of Will or Blood Moon, wherever you stand on that personally. All right, let's move on to the core strategy. The plan plays out in 3 clear stages. Early stage, drop cheap creatures like Esper Sentinel, Nesting Bot, or Skrelv. These create board presence and start your engines, no pun intended. Mid-late, lean into tutors and synergies. Cloud and Stoneforge Mystic find the perfect equipment for the game state. Pure Steel Paladin and Cloud can keep your hand stocked. And Cloud himself becomes a clock once equipped, and then late game, close it out. Skullclamp buries your opponent in cards. Pre-war Formula generates huge stats on the board, and Jeet blocks down combat. By this stage, your opponent should already feel behind. But we'll break each one of those down. So what to you is the core strategy? And a lot of people wonder what, and you've touched on this in a number of your streams and your videos of, is this going to be a GT game? Is this going to be a clamp game? Specifically in the mirrors as well, but we can touch on that more later. Like, what does it look like in your eyes when you're cracking your first 7?
So Duel Commander has the privileged position of giving you information before the match even starts, right? You get to see your opponent's commander. So that already starts the wheels turning in your head about what your game plan is, and helps you kind of deduce what you should be going for. But the early game, it does break down very similarly for Cloud, just because your commander and a lot of your cards are so cheap that and redundant. You're just going to have like a lot of tiny creatures, a lot of removal spells and equipment, and that's already, most of the deck. So if your hand has those elements, then you're usually pretty ready to go.
Excellent. What do you think is like, and obviously this is almost like you have open deck lists in a sense, as you said, with having the commanders face up. What do you feel is often the correct play for your first tutor with Cloud? Is it always go get Skullclamp? Is it, if you're playing like Orzhov or Rakdos, it's better to go get the pre-war formalware and back yourself up for the next tutor? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's very dependent on what your opponent's game plan is. Basically, the big three are going to be Skull Clamp, Formalware, and Jite. And if your opponent's playing aggressive or threatening creatures, you'll lean towards Jite. If your opponent is going to be playing a lot of removal spells that aren't exile based, you're going to usually lean Formalware, and then Skull Clamp in most other instances. I would say Skull Clamp's probably like 50% of your first cloud triggers, maybe a little bit more, but it definitely is a little variable. Like, there's a very common play pattern versus mono red where you play cloud on turn 2 and you just almost always grab Formalware, because then your cloud either trades with a removal spell or trades off with their commander or whatever their other piddly red creatures, and then you Formalware the cloud back, go get Masterwork of Ingenuity, block, get bolted, whatever, again, Masterwork of Ingenuity, copy the Formalware, get cloud back again, then you go get Jite, and then you try to end the game there. Similarly, if you're playing against a deck like Tifa, something that's just going to kill you before your cards matter at all, you're going to definitely want to go for Jite. There are also moments in the Cloud Mirror, like you mentioned. Something I try to break down a lot is this game a Jite game or a Skull Clamp game? Because those are basically the two most pivotal equipment to handle in the mirror.
Excellent. Speaking of just different pieces of equipment, and I know we'll breach on this later, I'm excited because there's a lot of... This is what I love about Duel Commander is I don't feel any deck is ever solved, and there always feels like there's 7 to 15 cards that you can really tech for, or, local, whatever your meta may be. So I guess we'll get into that later. So we'll move on to key cards and combos, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
All right. Aside from the obvious key cards, Skull Clamp and Jite, what are some consideration players picking up this deck for the first time should consider?
So there's a question that I get asked I don't know, maybe it's not shocking, but it's a little surprising to me how often people ask this, is how Cloud works with pre-war Formalware. There's a misconception. I was also told this by a judge before Cloud came out. I was told by a judge incorrectly that if you get Cloud back from pre-war Formalware, you get 2 Cloud triggers because he enters equipped by the Formalware, which is not correct. That's not how it works. The trigger is created when Cloud is returned to the battlefield in the middle of the trigger happening, but the trigger does not go in the stack until the effect fully resolves. The Cloud gets equipped at the Formalware, you just get the 1 trigger. So it's very important. I get asked that question a lot. You only get the 1 trigger with Formalwaring back Cloud. Still broken, but like not absurd.
Not as broken.
That would be obscene if you actually did get the double triggers. This deck we would be talking about a very different deck, I think, in terms of the power level and the ban worthiness.
Absolutely.
Some other things to think about are Cloud synergies with like just about every equipment in the deck. We talked about it a lot, but Skull Clamp, you just draw 4 cards instead of 2 because of how he doubles your triggers. It's pretty nuts. Jite, you get 4 counters instead of 2. Sword of Fire and Ice, ward off of Lava Spur Boots, stuff like that. A big one for me personally, I don't know if this is my spot to call it out, but Hand of Vecna is a card that I have.
No, please do. I think that card is sick, and when I seen you talking about it, I was like, yes.
More people should put it in their deck, and I don't get it. People are like losing to Lier and to Zusa and these combo decks that try to kill you really fast, and they're just like, oh, I get my Sword of War and Peace, and then on turn 3 I play it and attack for 2 with my Cloud, and then the next turn after that I equip it. Hand of Vecna just blows them up on turn 3 because it has a free equip, and then pumps the Cloud for every card in your hand twice because Cloud doubles the Hand of Vecna trigger. Usually you're attacking for like 12 or 14 on turn 3 with it. It is hands down the best card you can put in your deck to try to fix some of the combo matchups. I have killed Lier players on turn 3. I've killed Azusa players on turn 3 with it. The turn 3 kill is specifically with when you have turn 1 Cloud off of Gemstone Caverns, but like the combo matchups, the uninteractive matchups are some of your weaker ones because you're leaning on the deck leans on the strength of Skull Clamp so much. When you don't have time to execute your Skull Clamps, the deck feels a little bit worse. So Hand of Vecna really, really offsets that. And obviously, it's going to be a dead card sometimes. You're going to draw it against Aragorn or whatever, and it's going to feel kind of bad. But that's the beauty of a toolbox of Cloud having this like suite of cards you can tutor for, is that you're going to tutor for it a lot more than you're going to just randomly draw it.
Absolutely. And to your point, if you play Cloud, you get Hand of Vecna. You play Hand of Vecna on turn 3. You pay the life. I mean, you're paying 1 life for each card in your hand. Likely you have 4 to 5 cards. You're swinging for effectively, what is that, 10 to 12 damage? I mean, that doesn't even take into account if they've had to fetch or anything else. Like that is a 2-turn clock against a combo deck. That is exactly what you want to be doing. And I'm glad that you have been highlighting this card because I think this card is awesome and vastly underplayed within the format.
Yeah, shout out to Aghi in the Duel Commander, in English Duel Commander Discord, who, when I wrote my primer, I posted it, and there's a very specific like quote in the primer where talking about like other equipment you can play, and I specifically said, look, I've scoured the equipment list that you could play in Cloud like probably 10 times by now. Please don't ask me about like, oh, is my niche equipment playable? Because I probably looked at it and it's probably bad. And like within 10 minutes, he goes, is like, hey, what about this Hand of Egna card? And I swear to God, I've never seen this card in my life. I don't know how my eyes just glazed over it every time on Scryfall. And I was just like, wait, this card is good. This card is exactly what I was looking for. So instantly humbled. Always be sure to, listen to other people because sometimes they have really good ideas.
Yes, yes, they do. Excellent. I'll bring up another card here. Manrike Gusari. Is it cap? Is it real? What's your take on it?
I got Manrike Gusari'd in the mirror by Echo Baronen in one of the trials, and it was kind of scary. It was pretty rough. I won the match still, but if you're playing against a bunch of Cloud, you should you maybe probably should put it in your deck. I'm currently not, even though there is a ton of Cloud on MTGO. My plan is just kind of just skill diff the Cloud players, and I think my years and years of experience playing D&T have helped me execute that more often than not. I think my Cloud mirror win rate is pretty high. But like you said, if you're playing a local, you got a bunch of Cloud players. It's same as Hand of Egna, right? If you don't really want Hand of Egna if you're not seeing a bunch of Liers and Azusas and other, uninteractive combo decks, stuff like that. If you're seeing a bunch of Cloud players, you can put a Manrike in there. It's not the worst.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If you're going to Atlanta or if EW North America has a Duel Commander event, would you put a Manrike Gusari in your deck list?
I would probably not. My
Okay.
plan would probably still be to skill diff the Cloud mirrors, but not everyone has that luxury, I guess.
Fair.
We'll tag back up in a month after I'm like, oh, I'm 0-3 in the Cloud mirror. They all Manrike'd me.
Oh, when I see you in Pittsburgh, you'll be like, yeah, they all Manrike'd me. I was wrong. Or you just skill diff them all.
Whoever's listening to this, if you're going to Eternal Weekend, or if you're going to Atlanta, don't put Manrike in your deck. It's terrible. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Wait until after those events, then you can maybe try it after that.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'd like to touch on some of the enchantments just briefly. Parallax Wave being in here. Parallax Wave is just a cracked magic card. I see we have Seam Rip as well. Big fan of that from Edge of Eternities. How do you feel about Forge New? Do you feel it's appropriately speed-wise? Is it good enough? Is that like a cuttable? What is your take on that?
It's like really cuttable. I was talking about it on stream yesterday, and I think it's the most cuttable card that's currently in my deck. It's like pretty slow for what it does. The instant speed equipment can be nice, but I find that it is very situational and like pretty rare that I'm very excited to draw it. I played against the mono black deck that I was talking about. I played against it yesterday, and I was like, this is like the ideal matchup, I think, for a card like this, because one of the only real danger your equipment is in is getting Thoughtseize, and it's like, okay, if my equipment gets Thoughtseize, you can fortune it back, and it was like still pretty bad then. I was talking about cutting it a lot yesterday, and I probably will cut it for whatever list I stream next week. It's fine. I think most of the cards in the Cloud deck right now are like good-ish. It's just a matter of like trying to find the least good ones.
It's reasonable. Okay. Excellent. I'd like to kind of just one last thing is kind of touch on some of the cute interactions that you've seen with the deck, or maybe some of your cool memories or plays, interactions that you've had with the card. So like an example that I bring up, this happened to me on Monday. I was playing against Cloud. They had sort of Feast and Famine and Dust Bowl, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna not end well for me. And it didn't. I was getting my lands blown up left and right. Are there any cards or little micro synergies like that, or some of your favorite memories of playing recently with the deck?
One of my favorite memories, I posted a screenshot to Blue Sky when it was happening. I think it was either semis or the quarterfinals of the trial that I won with Cloud. I was playing against Lier, and I draw my game 2 hand, and it is Flagstones of Trocaire, 5 basic planes, and Gemstone Caverns. And I'm just like, snap keep, and I'm on the draw, and I just snap keep. Easiest keep of my life. And some people maybe disagreed with me, but my opponent did not disagree with me because they died on turn 3 because I played turn 1 Cloud, turn 2 Hand of Vecna, equip attack, and then they died.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Gemstone Caverns, one of the best cards in the deck. Like playing Cloud on turn 1 is really, really nuts. In terms of other fun little treats that I've done, I've yet to live this dream. In the vein of, we were talking about like, if you enchant Sheltered by Ghosts on Cloud and then get it equipped, you get the double ward triggers.
Right.
I don't even remember what the keyword is, but Indebted Spirit has the bestow. There we go. You can bestow Indebted Spirit onto Cloud and give him Afterlife 1, and then if you equip him and then he dies, you get 2 Afterlife triggers because it's giving Cloud the trigger, and you get 2 spirits out of that. I've never done it, and I probably never. It's so niche, but I always think about it when I have Indebted Spirit in my hand.
That's awesome, and I'm going to be bringing that up to a number of our local Cloud players after they listen to this guide, of course. Awesome. All right. I think this will dovetail nicely. You were talking about Gemstone Caverns. Let's talk about the mana base. So the mana here is supremely reliable. You've got a lot of snow-covered plains to form the backbone with utility sprinkled in. Obviously, Gemstone Caverns to steal the play. Let's kind of take it down a little bit. Let's talk about some of the utility in here. Why is Ancient Den in here?
Ancient Den kind of just has really gotten away with murder in being in the deck. I think it has almost no synergy. It's specifically Pure Steel Paladin getting to Metalcraft, and then like if you're playing Dispatch or whatever, it also helps you get Metalcraft for Dispatch. I have yet to get punished for having it in my deck, so I guess I've just never cut it, but one time I'm gonna get Wrath of the Skies or whatever, and it's gonna get blown up, and I'm just gonna instantly go and cut it from my deck and just put it in basic planes. It's not that. You don't really need it.
That Kellen player is just going to unload with that meltdown and be like, all right, this is the time I cut Ancient Den. Castle Ardenvale. Obviously, it's pretty apparent what it does, but again, is 4 mana okay in this deck in terms of activation 5 with the castle itself?
So the opportunity cost of the flex lands that produce white is much lower than like the colorless utility lands. So I will generally err on playing almost all of the white utility lands. And I've activated Castle Ardenvale plenty of times. Making 1/1s is great with Skull Clamp. It's great with getting bodies on board to equip. It's really nice in matchups where your opponent's holding up counter magic and you need to like still put pressure on the board, stuff like Aragorn, Elminster, stuff like that. Really nice with sort of Feast and Famine on occasion, a little bit win more, but I've definitely done that where I get like double Feast and Famine triggers off of Cloud, and then you float a bunch of mana, activate Castle Ardenvale, you untap, and you get another activation.
You know, it feels win more, but there are plenty of times in comp REL where those win more situations come up, and that's that line that just takes you over the edge and makes your breakers better or puts you into the top 8. And I think Castle Ardenvale in this list is great. The fact that Thalia and Cloud are able to utilize so many of the utility lands is awesome. We have City of Traders in Crystalvein. That one's incredibly apparent. We're just ramping a little bit extra with them. Dust Bowl, again, keeping up with the stacks and land destruction. I love Dust Bowl. I feel it's grossly underplayed overall in the format.
Yeah, I'm a big Dust Bowl fan. It's a more recent edition just because I'm seeing a lot of Azusa online, but I think Dust Bowl's one of the better colorless lands you can be playing. In a deck like Cloud especially, you're going to be up on cards a lot, so if you just like have a big handful of cards, you can kind of put your opponent in the Dust Bowl abyss until they miss a land drop, and then if you're like a little bit ahead on board, you're mostly fine. If they're stumbling, you can try to like keep Aragorn off of that like key mana to slam their card, or more importantly, like Dust Bowl down Atraxa so they can never get to that stage, stuff like that.
You're never landing that Dream Halls.
Yeah, or against Azusa, obviously, you get to blow up their Glacial Chasm or their Mace of It, something that's stopping you from killing them.
Excellent. We have both the Ganjos. I love a Ganjo Castle personally. I played in Cecil with Lyris, and I've had the opportunity to save 2 damage from what is that? Unstoppable Slasher, so understandable why that's in here. And then a Ganjo Seed of the Empire gets around real mom, not stepmom on occasions because it's colorless. I love that being in here as well. Flagstones of Trocaire. How do we feel about that?
Good with Geddon, good with Dust Bowl, very free. It's just an untapped white source. The only punish is like the Blood Moon effects are still in the format, like Harbinger, Magus, and then occasionally your own Winter Moon. But it's one of the better colorless, or one of the better white lands, honestly, just because it actually has synergy with like 3 other cards in your deck.
Yeah, things that you're doing, like you said, Armageddon, Ravages, and Dust Bowl. Wonderful. This next card, one of my favorites, Lazotep Quarry. I love the interaction, and you can do this on occasion with, with any commander really, but Cloud goes to the graveyard a fair amount where you're able to sack it, bring a token of Cloud back, and then because you're exiling the Cloud from the graveyard, you get to put that back in the command zone, and then Cloud's a 4/4 on the battlefield. I love this card. Again, another card that I feel is underplayed by a fair amount within Duel Commander in general.
Yeah, I don't see it in some people's monocolored decks, and I don't really get it. The card's like one of my favorite utility lands. I had a lot of fun playing it in Felia, and Cloud's curve is just really low, so it's very easy to just pay 3 or 4 mana and sack it to get back a powerful 1 or a 2 drop as a 4/4. It goes really nuts if you get the like Ocelot Pride, make the token copy and gain life in the same turn, and you get to make a copy of your Ocelot Pride, 4/4 Ocelot Pride. That dream does not get lived a lot, but on occasion you get to do the sweet thing. But
no, that is a very good call out, because a lot of people wouldn't recognize that you're getting a 4/4 black zombie.
Yeah,
Ocelot
you get 2 if you have
the City's Blessing.
City's Blessing as well. The other, I think, almost sometimes more relevant interaction is just the ability to like sack your own creatures sometime. Not only like protect your Doom Travelers from Swords of Plowshares, exile effects, stuff like that, but the ability to like fog opposing GTAs. I've done a lot in Cloud Mirrors, where if you don't have an active mom or whatever, you can just block their guy holding a GTA and sack your own creature to your Lazotep Quarry in order to prevent the GTA counters from happening.
Yes, classic sack if with lifelink, so they don't gain the lifelink. Perfect. Talon Gates of Mindara, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll go through it. Being able to phase out creatures, or again, you're drawing so many cards with Cloud that paying 4 to take it from your hand and place it on the battlefield is not uncommon.
Yeah, like Cloud is a very mana hungry deck, so I have definitely used it as just sometimes you just kind of want to ramp with it. It's a card that I've definitely appreciated more. I was adverse to putting it in Felia for a really long time. I don't think I ever even played it. I was just like, this card, I don't feel like it does enough, but I just had it in the initial Cloud list, and it's just way overperformed. And at some point, if I ever go back to Felia, I would definitely put it in the deck. It's just very good at taking out a key annoying opposing creature, helping you like get in with your own stuff more often, or like fogging a big creature for a turn.
Excellent. And then we have Tectonic Edge. How is this just another land destruction, just to keep up the stacks element?
Yeah, just another card that helps keep the the Atraxa player, the Azusa player a little bit off base. You want to get the edges where you can in some of the worst matchups, and putting the lands in are pretty free. I will say, just overall, colorless lands are not free. Cloud is a double white pip card, and there are definitely plenty of hands that I've had that can't actually cast Cloud on turn 2. So I see a lot of lists that are just playing like all the colorless lands I'm playing, and then on top of that they have a Rashadan Port and a Mutavault and a Darksteel Citadel to also enable their Metalcraft, and I guess is a combo with Armageddon or something. But
right.
It's just, you really don't want to play too many colorless lands in this deck. And for a long time, I've actually thought about cutting the Mishra's Factory. It's just kind of stayed in there because sometimes I just forget about it, and I just I don't look at the lands column when I'm making deck edits. And it's just like, the lands work fine. But Mishra's Factory does show up sometimes. It's nice against like Aragorn when you want a backup card to, cast a removal spell and take the Monarchy, stuff like that. But yeah, colorless lands are not free in this deck.
No. Absolutely not. But I like the synergy with Mishra's Factory and Pure Steel Paladin too. It's like similar to the old days of Mutavault, and tap it, turn it on. spell center sprite something. Here you're turning it on to turn on Metalcraft, which can be nice because it is a artifact creature at that juncture. So I think that's pretty cool. Um, Lastly, we've got Urza, Vintage All-Star Urza Saga. I feel like nearly every deck in this format should be running Urza Saga, and those that don't, I wonder why not.
Yeah, Urza Saga is just like busted. One of the best cards. Obviously, like very free in monocolored, especially really good in Cloud because it can go get Skull Clamp. Sometimes if your Cloud got countered 3 times or whatever, you can go get your Skull Clamp uncounterably and get your engine online that way. Just extremely good card.
Excellent. All right. I think that we went through all of the mana base in your list, so thank you for that. Moving to the next portion, we've got deck list highlights and differences. So the creature core is cheap and efficient. We've got Esper Sentinel, Mother of Runes, Skrelv. The removal suite is broad and clean with swords, plowshares, on the Ice, March of Otherworldly Light, and the equipment package. That's why you play the deck. So I'd like to take a moment and compare and contrast your list to some of the other more popular lists like Casa's, Blinkmoth Nexuses, Carbozo, and some other considerations. So let's start with Oswald Fiddlebender. I feel like personally that card's a trap, but that's just my take as an outsider.
Yeah, I'll fight to the death on this. I have what I imagine is very one-sided beef because I imagine most of the French players probably don't know I exist, but they are upset. I have one friend from Canada who feeds me information from the French Duel Commander Discord, and the French are obsessed with the Oswald pivot. Like they put like 10 cards in the deck to fuel Oswald, and then in all the combo matchups they just board out of Cloud into Oswald. And it's like, oh, you go get your Tanglewire and your Winter Orb against Zusa, or you go get like your Graveyard Hate and your Tanglewires against Lier and stuff. And I think it is just so much worse than just putting Hand of Vecna in your deck, and they're just so averse to doing it. But you have to not only put Oswald in your deck, you then have to put in a bunch of like piddly artifact guys that aren't very good. You have to put in like the Novice Inspector and the Thraben Inspector and the Perilous Snares and the 10 other cards. I don't have his list up directly in front of me, but like there's a bunch of artifact cards because you do need this artifact. You do need enough this density to make the Oswald pivot make sense. But instead of doing all that, you could just play better cards and then also put Hand Effect on your deck and kill the combo players anyway. I don't get it at all. I hate the Oswald.
That is why I started with that card in particular, because of why people would pivot to that. And it's like, to your point, you could, instead of playing all these dispersed creatures like Thraben Inspector and Novice Inspector and Tanglewire, and I'm not saying obviously Tanglewire is a fantastic Magic card, but you could do that and pivot into it, or hear me out, you can play Hand of Vecna and kill them on turn 3.
Yeah, I play Cloud Mirror sometimes. They're like have their Thraben Inspectors and their Novice Inspectors, and they'll have Skull Clamp, and they'll be like, oh, well, I'll Skull Clamp my Novice Inspector, and then I'll attack you for 2. And meanwhile, I'll be putting my 3rd Doom Traveler into play and drawing 4 cards, equipping in, then equipping the token, just like, hey, if you put more creatures with 1 toughness in your deck, you could get better use out of the best card in your deck. I don't know.
Yes, I completely agree. Another card I want to talk about that has fallen in and out of lists: Sid, Free Flyer Pilot. What is your take on Sid?
Sid's fine. It was one of the cards I was considering putting back in the deck over a Forge Anew. It's just kind of like a little bit of extra recursion, an evasive creature, gives you a little bit of mana, like cost reduction, helps your efficiency sometimes. It's a fine card. I don't have it in the deck right now. I played it in older versions before I think I kind of like streamlined the deck a lot. It's definitely an acceptable card.
How about Hella Trooper, also from Final Fantasy?
Hella Trooper is a very similar vein. Card I played for a while before it ended up getting cut. I've definitely got my butt kicked by Hell Trooper a couple of times. Flying is pretty nice in the mirror, and Hell Trooper gets to like jump another guy, gets to equip a lot cheaper. Back when the deck didn't have Hand of Vecna, and I like sort of War and Peace. I had natural sort of War and Peace, and I got to like turn 2 Hella Trooper into turn 3 War and Peace equip attack, which is almost as good as it's like half as good as Cloud equip Hand of Vecna attack, which I learned later, but. These are both like fine cards. There are a lot of cards that are like the 101st to like 115th cards you can put in Cloud, but I do think that in fine tuning, I've eliminated a lot of these kind of like fringe cards.
I feel you've done a great job of that as well. There's about four other cards I want to just touch on. One being Kemba, Ka Enduring. Do
So
you feel that's worthy or not?
you can put Kemba in this bucket of equippers, like auto equippers, as I call them. You have like Frodo, Kemba. There's like a 3-drop legend that I don't remember that does the same thing. But I kind of hate the auto equippers because what I learned, I had a lot of them in my very first draft of Cloud because I copied and pasted from Guy Bonella. I think had a list that I basically just stole and then iterated on from there. And the very first league, I was like, oh, you want to put all these equippers in your deck because you're an equipment deck. But the trick is that Cloud's not an equipment deck. It's a Skull Clamp, Pre-War, Form War, and Umezawa's GJ deck, and an equipment deck second. So like you don't need the free equipment. You want to just draw a bunch of cards with Skull Clamp. You want to Form War back your creatures, and GJ, I guess, free equip, that's fine. But these cards aren't that good. They're just like kind of mediocre cards that don't produce any sort of value. They don't have any synergies with the actual good cards in your deck, like Skull Clamp. And I'm generally not paying the equipped cost on my Sword of Fire and Ices until we're starting to reach the late game, and I'm running out of other ways to use my mana.
Excellent. Okay. Another one I want to bring up is Basari Tomorrow's Champion. How do you feel about that card?
Basri is in a lot of my older lists. When I did the Great Doomed Traveler update, after the very first league, there was just like a random Doom Traveler in Guy Benella's list, and I was like, "What is this card doing? I don't understand." And then after I played the first league, and I realized that Cloud was a Skull Clamp bot, and you just wanted to draw a Skull Clamp every game, I was like, "Can we just put every Doom Traveler that's ever been printed into this deck?" And Basri is like kind of a Doom Traveler a little bit, so he did make the cut initially. I cut him later because he's like one of the worst ones, because obviously he has Summoning Sickness before he starts getting to generate tokens. So he's a little bit worse with Skull Clamped, but he's also kind of a self-contained threat that can produce some value if left alone. So he's like fine as a cheap card, nice against like Aragorn and Elminster and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of come back into the deck at some point, but stuff like that. And I've started to unfortunately cut away at some of the worst Doom Travelers. Crawling Chorus is no longer my deck. Garrison Cat is probably next on the chopping block. Hasn't got cut yet, but
which brings me to your earlier point about people playing Novice Inspector with the 1/2 toughness. Flowering of the White Tree. How do you feel about that card?
Flowering of the White Tree is another. A lot of these cards are cards that I have played and then cut. Flowering of the White Tree was like kind of a neat card because it kind of synergized with a bunch of like little piddly creatures, and you get to make an Anthem's nice at actually turning them sideways and attacking. I ended up finding out that that's generally not your ideal game plan. It's also kind of cool that it gives your Cloud ward in another way. So if you get Cloud equipped and you have Flower in the White Tree, you get the double ward trick. But Flower in the White Tree is an Anthem. Anthems are for aggro decks, and Cloud is not an aggro deck, is eventually what I landed on. But it can be nice in some of those matchups where you do sometimes you just kind of have to be the aggro deck. But
okay, I've got a few more that we can just quickly run through. Orm's Chant. Did you previously test this, and did this get left on the cutting floor?
I have not played an Orm's Chant. That one's probably fine. It's a card that's like good against combo. It's passable elsewhere. You can like fog an opposing Cloud GTA turn, stuff like that, or tread water. But I've found that I don't think there are enough matchups where I would want it over something else. I like hard removal spells more. Obviously, it's hard to compare removal spell to Orm's Chant, because Orm's Chant's gonna have a lot more text in like a combo matchup. But
for sure. Okay, moving right along. Anduril, Flame of the West.
Anduril that's a card that I was looking at. It's the French really like that one.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah. It's fine. I've thought about if I kind of want it in the deck. I have discovered that I don't really want 3 Sword of X and Y style cards, like 3 equipment that cost 3 mana and I have to pay 2 to equip them. And the once you get to the third one, it does really feel like diminishing returns, because all of the swords kind of do similar things in terms of they're very big and expensive and can generate card advantage. And Anduril does that with 1/1s. Feast of Famine does that with making them discard a card, and then Sword of Fire and Ice can kill things and draw cards. Anduril's a card that I should I maybe should make room for it because it's maybe the best sword, even though it's obviously not an actual sword of X and Y, but
Right.
it's one of the
Generating
nicer
those
ones
extra
against like
bodies.
Aragorn, where you get to like flood the board with a bunch of bodies, which is usually a good strategy in that matchup. Where even sort of feast or even sort of Fire and Ice, which has like 2 relevant protections from Aragorn, it doesn't protect against like the best removal color in Aragorn, and can still get like bogged down number of like white creatures in their deck. Whereas Anduril just kind of shoves a bunch of creatures into play, which can be nice when fighting over Monarchy.
Absolutely. All right. Three quick ones. We've got Invasion of Gobakhan. Do you feel that has a place, or is the stacks element kind of to its max in the deck?
I think that card's probably not playable unless you're like flickering it with Felia. It was a
Okay.
really good card in Felia. I really liked that one.
Which, yeah, was why I brought that up. I know there was like a time where the two lists looked very, very similar because they were just porting off of one another, and now it feels like it's not solved, but there's a very, very distinct line to Cloud. Okay, next one, Lightstall Inquisitor.
That one's it's probably okay. I think I was talking about this one yesterday on the stream. It's got 1 toughness. It's a 1 toughness 1 drop, so it's like got the Skull Clamp baseline. It's got 2 power, so it's like reasonably aggressive. I think the effect is a little bit too light for me to really want it. It feels too close to just playing Savannah Lions without the strength of again like playing it. It's really probably good in Felia, where you can
Right.
really good for flickering. You really want a critical mass of 1 drops you can flicker in that deck.
Last one's a bit of a meme. Manular Kite.
I hate that. I have again the very one-sided beef with the French for some fucking reason. I don't know if I can cuss.
No, please feel free.
They all of the French players have this stupid mandibular kite in their deck. It's so bad. There's no use case for it. I don't get it. It's just a 1/1 flyer for 1. The thing is draft chaff. Cut it, put any of the other cards we've talked about. Literally anything is going to be better than this goddamn mandibular kite. I literally have one of my YouTube video thumbnails like making fun of mandibular kite because it's so fucking bad. Just play anything else.
Wonderful. I'll just end with this question to you with regards to deck differences. Do you feel that it's time to move away from more of the stacks land destruction elements of the deck and lean a little bit more heavy into the Skull Clamp, repeating creature plan with Doom Traveler, etc.? Or do you feel that's a place of the deck where there are some cuts that can be made aside from a Forge News we previously discussed?
I've been kind of leaning a little bit away from the Skull Clamp synergy stuff, specifically because it's felt like the meta is at least the online meta has started to adjust to Cloud in a way that like you can't lean on Skull Clamp as much, and sometimes I feel like I'm stuck with some of these Doom Travelers that don't do anything. They hold an equipment, but they aren't nearly as good without your Skull Clamp. I added Glimmer Lens to my list with a card that I had thought about but I hadn't actually played. I added it yesterday. Just it's an additional kind of engine piece equipment that's pretty reasonable on its own and pretty good with your number of 1-drop creatures to kind of get that card draw engine online. So I've tried to tilt the scale a tiny bit towards like playing reasonable value cards. It's kind of hard to balance with just the raw power of Skull Clamp. And then to the end of like the land destruction stuff, I think that stuff is for me is just generally going to be very light touches. I think Hand of Vecna goes a really long way towards pressuring the matchups where you want the Armageddons and stuff, because the Geddons are primarily there for the combo decks and stuff that I keep harping on. Lear and Azusa are always like the easiest examples, but there are plenty of similar decks that are like light on disruption and high on just kind of killing you if you leave them to their own devices by turn like 4 or 5. So the ones that are currently in the deck are there out of a vague necessity and the respect that those are worse matchups unless you play some of those support cards. But I think the deck at its core wants to balance between being the best Skull Clamp deck in the format and playing a decent chunk of kind of self-sufficient value cards in order to like navigate the more interactive matchups like Aragorn.
Perfect. All right, that ties nicely into where we're going next. Matchups and potential commander swaps. Whenever you build out a list, the real test is how it plays against different archetypes. As you know, in Duel Commander, every macro archetype is represented. How does Cloud play out against aggro, tempo, mid-range, control, and combo decks? Is there ever a consideration for commander swapping in games 2 and 3? And if so, to whom? Let's start with aggro.
All right. So aggro, I guess the best examples are probably just like mono red and Yoshimaru plus the X red commander or whatever, Bruce Taro, whatever they feel like. Mono red, I think, is one of the most lopsided matchups in all of Duel Commander right now. It's so good for Cloud. The play pattern of Cloud for Formaware and then Cloud for GT or Master Arc of Ingenuity, copy Formaware, then get GT is just so backbreaking. You can the consistency of Cloud. You just get GT every single game. It's felt like such an obscenely good matchup. I love queuing into mono red players. Yoshimaru definitely tilts the scales a little bit because the addition of white and the addition of more like big impactful creatures and less kind of piddling hasters. You don't get to take over the games as hard with GTA because their creatures are bigger and it can be sometimes harder to connect. They're definitely a lot less one note. So that matchup start, and then the addition of the white removal spells also makes just like the plan of just go grab form every game a little bit worse. That being said, I think you're very comfortable in the aggro matchups as your deck is just a bunch of removal spells and creatures to put in front of their stuff, and you try to just grind them out with Skull Clamp in that regard. I'll just say up top, I'm never considering swapping my commanders in with Cloud. I think Cloud, the consistency and the way that the deck is designed, Cloud is just like by far and away the best card. I've already spoken my piece about Oswald. There's also a little bit of people talking about like, oh, I board into. I don't think the flash on Felia puts it enough above Cloud to like help you navigate those control matchups. Sorry, I got off topic of talking about decks, but
I think that's a very valid point too. It feels like when people talk about swapping from Felia or Cloud to Felia, it often reminds me of like just a parallel in Legacy of you have Dimir Tempo and then you have Dimir Reanimator, but Dimir Reanimator is the worst Dimir Tempo deck. And it's a similar situation. It's like, you're not as good of a Felia deck, so why are we doing that? One consideration that I hear often is commander swapping to Thalia. Do you feel, again, similar situation? I feel if you have Hand of Vecna in your deck, you know how to clock them fast enough.
Yeah, I think Thalia is probably similar to Oswald. Granted, there is a lot less of a deck building commitment to Thalia, so I can respect it a little bit more. But I think if you just put Hand of Vecna in your deck, you're just much better served. The deck has a number of cards that are anti-combo already. You're playing against Lier, you look for your Graveyard Hate, or oftentimes like cheap instant speed removal spells to take down the Lier. You're playing against Azusa, you look for your Dust Bowl, stuff like that. And then just the consistency of always being able to go turn 2 Cloud, turn 3 hand when you want it. And then sometimes your hand dictates that you want to turn 2 Cloud, just go with Skull Clamp anyway, draw some cards. The power level and consistency of Cloud makes you build your deck in such a way that I think swapping to any other commander in any given matchup is just a net loss.
Excellent. I think that ties up aggro perfectly. What about the premier tempo deck in the format in the form of Aragorn? And I guess you could say some of the Malcolm decks as well.
Yeah, Malcolm or like Vivi, I guess, kind of tone line between like tempo and kind of I don't know how you would slot that deck, but
yeah.
Aragorn in my experience has been really 50-50. Aragorn's a tough nut to crack. It's kind of the Delver of Duel Commander. It's very good at what it does, and even if you feel like you have a good Aragorn matchup, it's never really that good. It's something that I've described D&T's matchup against Delver a lot, of just like, yeah, even if you have a good Delver matchup, you're still going to lose like a lot of your games because Delver is just such an efficient and powerful deck, and Aragorn's like the exact same. It's the most efficient threats, the most efficient counters, the most efficient removal spells, backed up by just a absurdly statted out commander. It's tough. I feel very 50-50 against it. I'm planning on doing a much more dedicated like Aragorn testing session rather than just like blindly jamming leagues going into Eternal Weekend. Just because that's always going to be like one of the biggest decks in the room. It's been very popular since its inception into the format. Cloud is a very cheap, efficient deck. Helps you play through like counter magic a lot of the time. You have a bunch of removal spells, so it is dangerous for them to go for Aragorn all the time. Like I said, it's a tough matchup to navigate, I think, and that costs a lot more than anything I feel about how the matchup leans overall. I think like a good Cloud player is going to beat a bad Aragorn player. A good Aragorn player is going to like beat a bad Cloud player a lot of the time, and it's really real close when they're like two good players going at it.
Yeah, I often friend of the channel, Tommy Ray, we did he won MagicCon Chicago with Aragorn. He's a top 8 at Vegas with Aragorn. He's a very accomplished player. And when people talk about their Aragorn matchup in this setting, I often refer to it as like Nadu Summer, where we're like, well, I have a good Nadu matchup. It's like, but you don't. It's like if you have a good Nadu matchup, you're playing Jeskai Control, and even then it's a coin flip. Like that's not a good matchup. That's a coin flip. So I agree with you there. I think that Aragorn, the only deck that Aragorn fears is Deadpool. And that's why, which is a whole nother conversation for another deck guide. But excellent. Let's move right along to midrange.
So what would we say are the premier mid-range decks? Like Slimefoot and Squee? Are we slotting Deadpool? And Deadpool, I think, a pretty good.
Yeah, I feel it's a Rakdos mid-range deck under the hood. I would say Kefka, Slimefoot, and Squee, and Deadpool. Those would be the three that come to my brain off the top.
Yeah, those are good ones. So I'll try to break them down because they all play a little bit differently, even though they're all kind of the same archetype. Starting with Slimefoot and Squee, people keep telling me it's a bad matchup, and I don't get it. It's just, I thought it was a good matchup when I was playing Felia, and Cloud just genuinely just has like 10 percentage points higher across the board in like every non-blue matchup over Felia, I think. You're a better Skull Clamp deck because you have it every game. You just have a bunch of cheap creatures in removal. They have a bunch of cheap creatures in removal, and then you just like kill them because you always have your Skull Clamp, and they don't always have their Skull Clamp. I don't really get it. Kefka's a little bit of a tougher nut to crack because it kind of toes the line between a tempo and a mid-range deck. It plays a little bit similarly to Aragorn.
Right.
It also has the added twist of the black giving access to hand disruption means that it's really hard to navigate. Like, how long should I hold on my Skull Clamp trying to play it around counter spells if it just gets like thought seized? It's another one that's hard to navigate, but overall I found that Kefka is mostly just a weaker deck than Aragorn, so I feel like the matchup has just felt a little bit better. They also don't have exile-based removal, so Formal War gains a lot of power in that matchup. And then lastly, Deadpool, which is unfortunately a deck that I have never ever played against because I have not played in paper, and the card will never exist on Magic Online. I can only speak about it in theoretically, and it makes sense that deck seems very nightmarish for Felia because Felia has, a million good ETBs, and if your commander gets all its text removed, then it really sucks. And in that vein, Cloud feels like the opposite because all of your creatures are just kind of bad, and none of them are super good to copy, and you have the ability to kill off a lot of your creatures with Skull Clamp. And I think Cloud would be fine against Deadpool, even if you have the option of, if you use Cloud for Skull Clamp, you can kill off your Cloud before their Deadpool turn. If they steal your Cloud, they can go get their own Skull Clamp, but you're the better Skull Clamp deck. And they're Rakdos base, so your Formal War gains a lot of sway. It's a matchup. Again, I only speak about it theoretically. Maybe I'll change my tune when I play against it in paper, but I think Cloud lines up really, really well.
In my experience as a Deadpool player and having played the matchup a lot, I feel that Cloud is, I put it 60-40 in Cloud's favor because you can grind with them. But again, the Cloud's ability to just draw 4 and totally negate the him that you were just landed or whatever. And to your point, Cloud not having not nearly as many great ETBs as Felia, it's just like, okay, what am I going to copy? The Doom Traveler here? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. I'm not feeling great about this. It's also why myself and other Deadpool players are coming back to K-Command, are coming back to Toxic Deluge, because you really need those clean board wipes or those 2-for-1s to deal with specifically the artifacts. And I mean, Jolted Awake's just a nightmare for us. So I would put it 60-40 in my experience in Cloud's favor versus Deadpool's favor. But that's just take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I imagine a good Deadpool player who's respecting Cloud is going to be teching with, the K commands and Mold Collapse and what other answers for Skull Clamp, a bunch of other shatters and stuff. And that definitely start swinging the matchup when you can't just lean on Skull Clamp as much. And it's another one that's if you put it in play and you don't have the mana to draw a bunch of cards, it might get shattered. If you leave it in your hand to try to find a more opportune moment, it can get Thoughtseized, stuff like that. So it's definitely something that you want to navigate carefully.
Excellent. Moving right along to control, we've got Elminster, you've got Urtai. I'd throw Glarb in this as well. I mean, Glarb's kind of a combo deck, but in that vein. Atraxa. Yep.
Yeah. I think this is where you start to struggle in matchups where your Skull Clamp inevitability is both harder to stick and also matters less. I think that some of the toughest matchups that I've had feel like Elminster and Atraxa specifically. These decks that just go really, really big, have a lot of board wipes, have a lot of answers to the things you're doing, and then also don't really care if you like draw 4 or 6 cards because your cards are just lower card quality than theirs. They're
Right.
just going to like kill you with a Wrath into like Elminster and make, like 5/1/1s or whatever. Or Atrax is going to draw 4 cards and, bury you with the 7/7, bunch of keywords, stuff like that. Those are some of the reasons that I've leaned towards like Winter Orb, Armageddon effects, stuff like that. They are really, really hard matchups to navigate, especially the way I've built the deck. You're not as good at being an aggressor. There are cards that you would maybe want to look towards cheap individual threats in order to try to pressure those decks. Stuff like that, as we were talking about, something that kind of creates its own clock and its own card advantage on turn 1, demands a sort of answer that your just kind of generic Doom Travelers aren't going to generate.
Excellent. Combo. I mean, it's kind of fading. I don't want to say that. Rogtev getting punched in the nose is taking that down a bit, but where do you feel Cloud is against combo? We obviously talked about Hand of Vecna and controlling their mana base so they can't outramp you, or in that sense. How do you feel that overarching archetype is?
Depends a lot on the specific combo deck, but we'll hit a couple of them. Initially, I thought that the combo decks were pretty rough for Cloud, but the more I've played them, the more comfortable I've felt against. We'll lump a Zusa in here. It's not really a combo deck, but it's like a Cloud Post, big mana deck.
Yeah, I'd put it in there. I think that's fair.
It's similar enough, very uninteractive, and like if you don't do anything by like turn 5, they're going to kill you. It is combo adjacent in that vein. But the more I've played against them, the more I've kind of figured out how to identify my proper play patterns. And Hand of Vecna obviously has helped a lot in both the Azusa and Lier matchups, some of the easiest ones to point out. They are cards that they're decks that I've made specific deck building considerations towards. I've played Soul Guide Lantern in my deck. It's currently not in the list, but it's been in and out in no small part because it's respect to those specific 2 decks, Azusa and Lier, in terms of graveyard hit being really good against both of them. But you can add more cards to your deck. We could play the Orum's Chance to help improve the Lier matchup, stuff like that. We could play the Cataclysm if we want to try to improve the Azusa matchup a little bit more. But the more I play them, the more that they've felt pretty reasonable for Cloud. It's tough because genuinely Cloud has felt so good that I hesitate to call any matchup that bad. When I'm talking about like Elminster feeling bad, I'm still like probably 50-50 in the amount of games I've played against Elminster. They are really hard matchups to navigate, and I think on average I am probably unfavored, but like not by like a huge margin. All the games feel very winnable. But overall, combo is definitely like the decks that try to invalidate Skull Clamp are the matchups that are going to, in general, be tougher to beat because Skull Clamp is just the best card in your deck by far. I guess on the other half of that spectrum is probably like Thrasios, Ravos as a combo deck. And I think that matchup gets way, way, way better because it's a creature combo deck and you have a bunch of removal spells. You have getting GT online suddenly. You have a lot more time in tandem with your removal spells. If you Skull Clamp draw 4 cards, you find more removal to answer their stuff. It's definitely an easier matchup to get through.
Excellent. I'll finish this segment up with probably the most important matchup, the Mirror. How do you feel in the Mirror?
Lock in, play fast. If you're playing in paper, especially, the mirrors go for a really long time. As a Death and Taxes player, I get it. Like the matchups will take a long time. You need to be you need to be playing fast from the start in paper, or you're going to go to turns. It's
So announce your intentions and shortcut to the best of your
especially
ability.
when you're tutoring. When you cast Cloud, know what you're getting. Say, okay, Skull Clamp, go do your thing, or GT, do your thing. A little bit drilling down a little bit more. I think a very key point of interaction in the mirror is deducing the difference between a Skull Clamp opening hand and a GT opening hand. And I think Cloud players love to go for GT way too often. The deck has a lot of answers to GT, so if you just like play out your GTA and it gets killed before you could get a connection, or like, you know, you equip the GTA, the creature gets plowed, you don't get that connection, they untap and they skyclave it or whatever. Sometimes you just want to skull clamp and like draw 4 cards first. And I don't think a lot of people identify what the proper course of action is, but
I think that's a very salient point, because I think that a lot of people don't understand what, you know, not to reference an ancient article, who's the beatdown. I'm not saying that in this particular sense, but understanding what your role is within the context of the mirror. And it is, as you often say on your streams, is this a skull clamp match? Is this a GT match? And even if you feel it's a GT match, to your point, you have to worry about, you know, just so many things within the mirror that's tacked out to deal with that. Like, you know, you previously just brought it up with Skyclave Apparition, or having free pitch spells like Solitude so that you don't get that first connection. And then you're, even though they've just, you know, pitched a card to Solitude and are a little bit behind, you're so far behind on what you thought what you forecasted your game plan to be, and now you're on the back foot.
yeah, mana efficiency is so important. And if you're like working really hard to connect with GTA, then you pay 2 mana for your GTA, then pay 2 mana to equip your GTA, and then you just get blown out. It's so much more backbreaking than if you're like, okay, I'll skull climb my Cloud. Okay, you plowed it. Well, I spent 2 mana here, and I can still start doing other stuff.
Excellent. All right, let's move along to opening hand heuristics. So let's talk about opening hands with Cloud. Mulligans matter a lot, just like any deck. What does an ideal hand look like in general, and what should players picking up this deck, or experienced players, be mulliganing to?
I tend to keep my hands pretty aggressively with Cloud. The deck has a lot of 1-drops, and that's pretty key. A very important play pattern is when you're on the draw, you almost always want to be able to play a 1-drop on turn 1, because if you don't, it means that you can't cast Cloud on turn 2 without moving to discard, which is, you know, not something you want to do. So the deck luckily has, you know, a million Doom Travelers, a million Mothers of Runes, a bunch of removal spells in the matchups that you're going to need those in. So you will generally have that 1-drop, but it's just an important thing to think about. It's something that it's an easy thing to forget the very first time it happens, because it's not something you ever think about. Like, I played a land and I cast my spell on turn 2, and now I have to move to discard. What happened? But when you cast your free card out of your command zone and then add another card to your hand, it's a little bit awkward. Outside of that, mulligan, looking at your ideal hand, it just depends a lot on what your opponent's going to be playing. Like we talked about earlier, we get a little bit of information before we get to decide our opening hand. If your opponent's playing, you know, Tifa or Mono Red or Yoshimaru, stuff like that, you're going to obviously be looking for a bunch of removal spells. If your opponent's on Aragorn, you want try to get a more mix of removal spells and creatures, stuff that you want to be playing to the board. If your opponent's on a more controlling deck, you want to, you know, lean, or a combo deck, lean heavier creatures and less so on the removal spells. But generally speaking, I'll keep most hands that just have 3 lands and some stuff to do, because the best thing you could be doing with Cloud is just cast Cloud on turn 2 and go get one of your best cards in your deck, Skull Clam, Pre-War Formalware, GTA, and if you have the mana to start doing that stuff, then you're usually good to go.
Awesome. We get to move along to the next segment, Keeper Mulligan. Before we wrap up, this is one of my favorite segments of doing these deck guides. I've got 4 opening hands and want to know, regardless of player draw, if you would keep or mulligan, and this is opponent agnostic, and how you see each hand playing out. So let's start with the first one. You've got Gemstone Caverns, 2 Snow-Covered Plains, a Flagstones of Turo Care, a Masterwork of an Ingenuity, On Thin Ice, and a Benevolent Bodyguard. How do you feel about this hand?
Say no more. Snap keep. We have Gemstone Caverns, best card in the deck. Well, if you're on the draw, this is 100% a snap keep, because Gemstone Caverns are nuts. I'd probably just pitch the Masterwork of Ingenuity. If you're on the play, hand's obviously a little bit worse, but we even also have the additional 1-drop in the Benevolent Bodyguard, so we can still just go 1-drop into Cloud, you know, my favorite thing to do. This hand is completely fine. We have the lands, we have the removal spell, we have the creature. This is like the platonic ideal of a cloud hand.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Moving right along to the next hand. We've got Flagstones, City of Traders, Snow-Covered Plains, Hunted Witness, Lay Down Arms, Sworn Canoness, and Lion Sash.
This one's a bit more awkward because we have some much more specific cards, right? We have the Lion Sash, we have this Sworn Canoness. I'm still snap keeping this, play or draw, because we have the 1-drop, we have the removal spell. The Lay Down Arms is going to have a little bit of tension because we actually only have 1 plains in this hand currently. So it depends a little bit on the matchup we're playing in. If my opponent's more likely to have a 1-drop creature, the Mirror or Mono Red or Yoshimaru or the Mana Dork decks, Slime Foot and Squeeze, stuff like that. And this Lay Down Arms is more likely to tag something that is nice. But it is also notable that we have the City of Traders, which is really important in those creature matchups as well, because it's one of the few cards that allows for that turn 3 Umezawa's GTA equip, something that matters a lot versus the less interactive creature deck, something like Tifa. I really value the ability to play equip GTA on turn 3. So you just go turn 1, remove their Mana Dork or play your Hunted Witness or whatever. Turn 2, play Cloud, grab GTA. Turn 3, City of Traders, play GTA, equip GTA, get 4 counters, win the game.
In the game. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Against Tifa specifically, a GTA with 4 counters it's very close to win the game.
Yeah, yes it is.
But like I said, this Lion Sash and this Sworn Canoness are a little bit more awkward. They're kind of fine because their bodies, they'll do stuff. They will get played, and maybe you put an equipment on them down the road. The Lion Sash is obviously going to be nice if you're playing against a graveyard deck. The Aether-Sworn Canoness is going to be nice if you're playing against a combo deck. Aether-Sworn is definitely one of the weaker cards overall, though. Not super excited to see it outside of the combo decks, but like this hand's still perfectly functional.
Okay. Moving along to the third hand, we've got 3 Snow-Covered Plains, Winter Moon, Hand of Vecna, Anthin Ice, and Jacked Rabbit.
We didn't talk about this at all, but man, I love Jacked Rabbit. It's like Jacked Rabbit is my.
The floor is yours, John Ryan. Please tell us about your love.
I love Jacked Rabbit. If you cut Jacked Rabbit, you're wrong. I'm sorry. It's Jacked Rabbit's great. Anyway, this hand starts to get a little bit more awkward. We have a lot more situational cards. We're snap keeping if my opponent's like a 3-color deck because Winter Moon's nuts, right? We're snap keeping against like Aragorn or Kefka or Slimefoot and Squeeze, something like that, especially because we also have this Anthin Ice, stuff like that, where you're gonna like punish them hard for the Winter Moon with this Winter Moon. We don't have a 1-drop creature, but that is mitigated by like most of the matchups where you want a 1-drop creature, also matchups where Winter Moon is nuts. We have this Hand of Vecna, which is kind of bad because in the matchups where if we're playing against Lier or whatever, this hand's actually like pretty terrible against Lier. I might maybe mulligan against Lier specifically because Winter Moon's dead, Anthin Ice is basically dead, Jacked Rabbit's whatever. And then the Hand of Vecna is one of the only 2 equipment that I guess you can go get like Lion Sash or Skull Clamp with your Cloud, but there's a decent chance you want to mulligan this hand against like exactly Lier. But the mixture, the removal and the Winter Moon make me think that it's going to be good against most decks here.
Okay. All right. Moving along to our final hand. We've got 2 Snow-Covered Plains, a Tech Edge, I should say 3 Snow-Covered Plains, Disruptor Flute, Cathar Commando, and Recruiter of the Guard.
And these are the hands that like I keep on when I'm playing leagues that maybe I shouldn't, and maybe I'm lazy. I emphasize the importance of 1-drops, and this hand's probably just a mulligan when you're on the draw because you can't cast Cloud on turn 2. We again have like some pretty situational cards like Disruptor Flute and Cathar Commando. While they have a lot of utility, you can almost always name a commander with a Disruptor Flute, and like Cathar Commando is an aggressive-ish flash threat that can also like shatter things in the mirror or whatever. I'd probably keep this hand in the mirror even on the draw because Cathar Commando and Disruptor Flute are good, but against the average deck, you could probably ship this, especially on the draw. When you're on the play, you could maybe keep it, but yeah, I think I might keep this on the. It's a little bit matchup dependent. If you're playing against like Mono Red, I'm not keeping this. If we're playing in the mirror, I'm keeping this. If we're playing against like Aragorn, I value card quantity just because Aragorn is such a grindy matchup that not having a 1-drop does kind of suck.
I'm curious. In the mirror, what are you naming with Disruptor Flute?
You can just wait until they put their Cloud into play, and then you name the thing that. Or if you're on the play, you can name. Wait, you can't name Cloud because then you don't get your own Cloud. It's probably not a great plan. I mean, you could, but you could just wait and name whatever they get off of their cloud, and then you just play your cloud and go get the other thing between GTA and Skullclamp. We also have Cathar Commando to blow up the other thing that they get. So generally speaking, once you go grab one of your equipment, eventually the cloud's going to die and you're going to cast cloud again, and that's almost always when you get the second of the two key equipment in the matchup. So the fact that we have answers to both of them is really nice. Although obviously Disruptor Flute is not a permanent answer. It can get answered by any number of their artifact removals, their Cathar Commandos or Skyclaves or what have you.
Perfect. All right, well, that brings us to the outro. That's Cloud Midgar Mercenary. Aggressive, resilient, and always ready to fight. You win by sticking a threat, keeping the pressure up, and forcing your opponents to burn through their interaction till nothing's left. If you've been running Cloud yourself, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And thanks for listening to John Ryan. And thanks to John Ryan for joining me on the Stat Guide. I'll open the floor up to John Ryan one more time. Will you be at EW or MagicCon Atlanta?
The plan is to go to exactly one of them. I can't really field both of those trips in such close proximity. They're like 2 weeks apart, unfortunately. I'm currently in the Eternal Weekend schedule announcement waiting room. I'm hoping that they have like some cool, big, flashy Duel Commander event. I have pretty reasonable hopes that they will have one. They've supported a lot of the more niche formats in the past. They've ran like really big, like
if pre-modern gets some love, can we have some love?
Yeah, exactly. They've run like big old school pre-modern CEDH events, stuff like that. I would be pretty shocked if they don't run an event as big or bigger than like the average Duel Commander Cup at the MC.
Yeah, that's my hope and take as well, is that I would love for eDubs to welcome Duel Commander. I know last year there were a lot of players asking politely. I myself has been emailing them and asking politely. I know others have as well. I'm really hoping that whenever they release the schedule, we get one event either on Thursday or Sunday. I would love that. Anything else you have got going on, XJ?
Short of that, you can catch me on Twitch or watch the streams on YouTube. I'll be playing a lot of Duel Commander until they make Legacy playable, which is probably not until 2026. So,
haven't you heard that Oops All Spells is a very hard to navigate deck? That's what I've been informed from reliable sources.
Loves to play against Blue-Black Reanimator for 2 straight years and 3 bannings.
As a Dimir lover at heart and Grixis player, and I've never once touched that deck, and I don't yuck anybody's yum, but I'm just like, please, just Span and Tomb, please.
I just
Span and Tomb.
D&T is pretty reasonable the meta right now. I talked a lot with Adam Wasmo, who won the most recent Legacy Showcase with D&T. I helped him test a lot for that event. I think D&T is pretty well positioned right now if you can like dodge Mystic Forge. It's not that like, oh, I'm a D&T one trick and D&T's bad and I don't want to play Legacy. It's just that I'm so bored of the format. It's so exhausting. I'm looking at the meta and just like, this is identical to last year's Eternal Weekend. Oh, what are the best decks? Blueback Reanimator, Nadu, Mystic Forge. This is 2024 all over again. Our bans did nothing.
Excellent. Well, I'll end on that. I'm Bo, and this is Manifest Dread, MTG. Thank you so much for listening.